Good morning, everyone, to UnCon 2, the Internet of Things special. And asking the big question, is 2020 the year of IoT? Folks, I'm just going to do a quick introduction today. We've got Stewart Davison with us, who is running events today and comparing. So he is your host. I will take part during the day and hopefully catch up with many of you as the day goes on. But I am going to listen intently. So the Internet of Things is something we're passionate about. I had a discussion with Stuart the other day there, whether to use the word passion, but I think it's true. We truly are, and especially Stuart. Stuart's going to kick off the day actually going back in time to round about 2014, where Stuart started the bandwagon rolling on Internet of Things. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I should say, it's not been the best of take-ups on the sector, and we're hoping today will be that day when we start asking ourselves, is IoT in 2020 the sign of things now and the sign of things to come? So Stuart, I'm going to leave it to you to introduce yourself and start your presentation. Thanks everyone, and enjoy the day. Thank you.
Cheers, Dave. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to UnCon 2. I'm just going to kick off today with about the next 10 to 15 minutes. Just a bit of scene setting. As Dave said, we're going to go back in time. I'm going to do some highlights of a presentation that I gave back in 2014 at Homes, which was the first presentation around IoT in social housing. So without further ado, I'm just going to share the screen and we're going to go and take a look at a Prezi. And this is, as I said, this is a presentation I gave back in 2014. You know, are you ready for the Internet of Things? So, you know, first of all, just to make sure we're all on the same page, you know, what is the Internet of Things? So the Internet of Things is the network of physical objects or things embedded with electronics, software, sensors, and connectivity to enable it to achieve greater value and service by exchanging data with the manufacturer, operator, and/or other connected devices. What a mouthful. Basically, you know, back in 2014, we didn't really understand what this technology was. So it was things like smartwatches, smartphones, etc. Hopefully, everyone who's come on UnCon today is a little bit more familiar with what the Internet of Things is all about. What I will do, though, and I think it's still important, is show a very short video from Cisco. So bear with me.
This is the cat. The Internet of Everything is changing everything. Cisco, tomorrow starts here.
So that video, I mean, it's actually from 2013, that Cisco clip about the Internet of Everything. And I used to say to people, it's a little bit utopian. There's lots of technologies there that kind of look a bit like Minority Report. But even then, back in sort of 2013, 2014, there were elements of IoT that are shown in that video that were live. And I think kind of 6 years later, there's a lot more of what you see in that short clip that are happening today. You know, the kind of combination of technologies to bring greater outcomes. And that's something that, you know, I would have expected hopefully to have seen, you know, 6 years later. And, you know, back in 2014, it's, you know, we had all these stats, especially from Gartner. So, you know, IoT was going to connect 15 billion devices in 2015 and 50 billion by 2020. IoT was starting to become more mainstream. You had big companies like Samsung who were committing to IoT. So, you know, whilst 2014, IoT was on the cusp, you know, later on, I'll actually take a look at where we are now. So that's just something, you know, a little snapshot of where we thought IoT was going to be back in 2014. But also, who was using IoT back in 2014 in housing? I mean, if we focus in on that for a second, that is a scan of Inside Housing, September edition 2014, which talked all about Orbit and how Orbit were using sensors in a care setting. There were other examples back in 2014. There were a number of HAs that were doing small pilots. So, even in the kind of early days, there were still HAs who were starting to think, well, what can this technology do for us? How can we adapt it? How can we start building it into our business models? And I think one of the things we'll look at in this afternoon's panel session are things like what barriers have prevented more widespread adoption of IoT, but also how HAs can perhaps take advantage of the technology that we're seeing today. So that'll be something that we'll cover with the panel this afternoon. When I gave this presentation in 2014, I wanted to steer clear of the more person-centric IoT. It was because it was so early in the days of what IoT could do. There was a lot of concern around privacy. I can remember going to an event with 200 council leaders who were very nervous about the privacy implications of IoT. And because of that, I focused a lot more on the built environment and the property and the property management and asset management, specifically. So, the things that I was talking about here in 2014, like predictive faults, detect and isolate, if there are issues, we can see, for example, technologies like Switchy, where you can actually do remote shutdowns of boilers using their Switchy connected service. I was talking about how the use of Internet of Things could optimize asset management and even, integrate into other supply chains and automate parts and consumable ordering. This is all stuff that we've seen develop over the last 6 years. And I was talking very much around things like gas maintenance, gas servicing, the costs of no access. We still see a lot of problems in the housing sector around no access. There are lots of technologies that have sprung up in the time, things like gas tag, are focused very much on gas servicing and reducing no accesses. But also, it'll be something I think with the suppliers that we've got here today. I know there are some suppliers that very much focus on asset management and the Internet of Things. So it might be interesting for you when you have your opportunity in the networking breaks to seek them out, have a conversation with them and find out what they're doing around things like no access, gas maintenance, gas servicing, and the built environment. And back in 2014, I was posing this idea of we have all these issues, but what if we were to use sensors? This idea of the connected boiler, connecting the house, the service, maybe your housing management system, maybe your mobile application, all through the Internet of Things. And the idea being very much that we'd see condition data sent automatically. Obviously, I've already spoken about Switchy, but some of our sponsors who are going to be doing the power pitches next, people like IOPT, Safe Facility, and Smart Rent, it's all about what condition data that you as an organization can capture when you start putting sensors into a property. It was very much about setting automated actions. So rather than having to worry about chasing issues down, a tenant ringing you to say the boiler's failed or that there's been a problem with a leaking pipe, it's about automating that process and being more proactive when it comes to maintenance. And again, I was talking about how you connect all this technology into your wider IT infrastructure, so you could automate repairs. You could actually get, your DLO or your contractor contacting the tenant directly and saying, we've seen there's a potential problem with the boiler. Again, I'll just focus on Switchy for a moment. Switchy have got a great function where they can do remote ignition startups of boilers. So think about how you could use that in kind of August and September. Do remote fire up of all your combi boilers, find the ones where Switchy tells you there's a problem, and actually proactively send engineers out to sort those out before you have all the problems in October and November. So for me, it was very much around the smarter home. And back in 2014, I was focusing on things like humidity, temperature, energy usage, things like carbon monoxide. And again, people like IOT, Smart Home and Safe Facility, are looking at those sorts of IoT packages for social housing. You know, I was talking like it wasn't really science fiction. Even back in 2014, we had British Gas looking at Hive, looking at connecting smart boilers. Funnily enough, back in 2014, talking again about UK government's plans for smart meters by the end of 2020, still not happened. But it was just trying to point out that, you know, a lot of large companies were really starting to invest heavily in the world of IoT. So that's a presentation. I mean, I've truncated it. I've taken quite a bit out that isn't relevant now. But that's the kind of thing that I was talking to the sector about back in 2014. And let's just see where we are now. You know, back to the present now, back in 2020. So there was a slide there that was talking about how we thought we'd have 50 billion devices connected by 2020. I went online yesterday, and the current stat is there's 31 billion IoT devices connected worldwide. So that's still pretty good. You know, it's not the 50 billion, but it's still damn good. There's still a continued take-up of IoT-type technologies in the care sector. Again, you only need to go online, Google housing and care, and you'll see there's a lot of examples now, a lot of case studies about how the care sector is using technology. We've got British Gas and Hive. Well, I mean, they were doing the connected boiler projects back in 2014. Now they've got Boiler IQ. So if you're a British Gas customer and you've got a Worcester Bosch boiler, you can actually, you know, get a smart device that connects to your home boiler, and it will send condition data and fault reports up. So, you know, they've come a long way. As I said, smart meters still being rolled out. When is it ever going to end? Whilst there were big companies investing heavily into things like IoT, we've now also got a plethora of startups who are using IoT technologies. And again, some of those are here today. At the time in 2014, price was a big barrier. You know, network connectivity, the price of sensors, that's, you know, back in 2020, there's, you know, we've got things like NB-IoT, LTE networks, 5G coming online. So network connectivity has been reduced quite a lot, and so is the price. And because we've had a lot more startup-y type companies coming in, you know, hardware costs have come down. A lot of these companies are looking at better understanding of the security impacts of IoT, better ways to use the actual technologies themselves. So, you know, price is becoming less of a factor, I think, and that's only going to get better as we move forward. And, you know, I was talking about when I was doing those presentations back in 2014 that, you know, there still isn't any large rollouts of IoT in social housing. So it's quite timely that our main sponsor, IOPT, yesterday, I noticed had a press release that went out saying that they'd just actually engaged in a £1 million contract with Renfrewshire Council for deploying IoT sensors in thousands of their social housing properties. So I think it was Scottish Housing News that stated it's the largest scale deployment of IoT sensors in UK social housing currently. So I think it's quite timely. And that kind of now leads me on to inviting our power pitch speakers onto the stage. See if you could all click on. Here we go. Hello, Dane.
Nice you.
Just waiting for Rowley and for Kian to come on.
Like a bad boy band, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Bad boy band. Hi, Rowley.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just needed to click my cam on. I'm wondering why I wasn't just appearing magically.
Yeah, just wait for Kian. So Kian, remember, click your cam on and your mic on.
He is here. I was chatting to him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and we've already done a run through, so it was all slick and it was great. But maybe he's gone off for a cup of tea. Oh God, Dave Lane just said, name the boy band and win an UnCon mug. And I know that some of the sound had dropped off. That was probably me being stupid by clicking my mic off. But, you know, hey, isn't this part of the great world we live in now of this virtual? So I don't know where Kean is. I'm desperately hoping that when it comes to Kean's 15-minute power pitch, he comes on. But without further ado, what I want to do is we'll have Dane first, then we'll have Rowley, and then we'll have Kean. So Rowley, if you could just mute your mic and turn your cam off. I will do the same, Dane. The floor is yours. My face will not appear
the airwaves
until we're at 15 minutes. All right, mate? So
cool.
I yield the floor to you.
If I can work it, that is. There we go. Well, I can't get any feedback here, I don't think so. I hope that everybody can see this. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all keeping well under these very exceptional circumstances. And thank you, Stuart and Dave, for putting this on. It's a very interesting time, particularly with coronavirus. Just reinforcing the fact that remote monitoring and IoT and all that sort of stuff is coming of its time. But we have been, as Stuart's just shown in his presentation, that we have been hearing about IoT for a very long time now. In industry, it's nothing new. I personally have been working in IoT in industry for about 20 years now, something like that. But it's been in things like ATM machines, aircraft engines, where we monitor the aircraft engines on wing, making sure that they're performing correctly, making sure we're maintaining them at the correct time, and making sure that they are performing as well as they possibly can. And when we got approached to work in housing by a council up here in Scotland, we were working in electricity distribution grids, trying to make them more efficient. So IoT in industry, which is what I see the housing sector as being an industry, is nothing new, but it's all been about managing the asset and making sure the assets life is extended as long as possible and they're being used correctly and, as I said earlier, performing as they were designed. And really, you know, that's what housing is great for. But you know, IoT is a bit of a thing. We've been hearing about it for ages, whether it's smart bins telling you what the weather's going to be. The new one is obviously a lot of talking about cars, self-driving taxis, how the cars interact with each other. And my favorite, the smart toilet, I'm not sure quite exactly what it's meant to do, but yeah, the less said about that, probably the better. But housing is absolutely ideal for the Internet of Things. I mean, you've got remote assets, tens of thousands of remote assets dotted all around the country that are remote from the people who really care about them, the stakeholders, the asset managers. And okay, you do have tenants in there, obviously, and hopefully they are engaged and hopefully they are a stakeholder in the correct term of it, but not all of them are. And what we all really need to be driving towards is using the Internet of Things to make a positive difference, and make sure that properties are maintained and healthy. So the big question for today is 2020 the year of IoT and social housing? I think we all know that 2020 is clearly about something else at the minute, and the old C word. And has it had an impact on IoT and in the housing in particular? And of course it has. I mean, we should have had, in the last 3 months alone, we should have deployed about 200 properties with sensors for various organizations all across the country. So it has slowed down the rollouts of IoT pilots and projects, and Stewart mentioned the one we've just won with Renfrewshire. But it's also had another impact, and that is it's really focused everybody's attention on the quality and health of housing that is being supplied. And IoT can have a massive impact on that. And so I think coronavirus in 2020 has actually had in a bizarre way, obviously we wouldn't have wanted to go through it in the first place, but in a bizarre way, it's had a positive impact on how IoT can be seen. Having said that, though, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but I don't think 2020 is the year of IoT in social housing. There's obviously some pretty big strides being made, but a lot of what Stewart mentioned is actually still the case. So whilst I don't think it will be, I do think we're on the right road, and we will be getting there, and this is how, really, I think we should be getting there. IoT in industry really only works at scale, where the value is really driven out of it. And we are not there yet, but we are getting in that direction, in the right direction in housing. Within the next 12 months, we have contracts that will see around about 2,000 homes monitored in social housing for IoT systems. And whilst that is a significant step forward, it's obviously just a drop in the ocean of about the 4 million-ish social housing properties in the UK. But it is a step in the right direction. I think, or we think as a team, that one of the biggest steps we need to take is to get a higher level of corporate C-suite level buy-in into what IoT can do in housing. And in that case, it's really about educating the C-suite about what the advantages are of having IoT across the whole of our portfolio. Stewart mentioned one of the things is cost, or it has traditionally been cost. But the cost of IoT has come down dramatically in the last 5-10 years, even shorter time than that, actually. With the rollout of LoRa, for example, I was talking to Dean Marsh at Mid Wales Housing earlier on in this, and he's using LoRa, and it makes a massive difference to be able to use LoRa, where you can go out and roll out your own networks if needs be, or get somebody specialist come in and roll out a LoRa network, without having to use the extra cost of using SIM cards or something like that. The cost of hardware has come down massively, but there's still a long way to go to that. Cost of data storage has come down. We're working with some big organizations globally that are working very hard to reduce the cost of data storage, the data communication, and of course the analytics, because every time you want to do some kind of analytics, you have to haul data in, and that every time you make that call, it costs you something. So, there's good progression being made. But of course, the biggest reason for IoT in housing is a return on the investment. Is it actually going to be saving us money? Is it actually going to be making our teams more efficient? And again, we think that one of the blockers is probably the wrong term, but one of the biggest stumbling blocks, or at least speed bumps in the road to slow the whole thing down, are that everybody is working in IoT as different teams. So there's a maintenance team, there's a tenant management team, executive level, and then of course there's the social benefits of IoT with detecting fuel poverty and things like that. And once we start working across organizations with various different teams and understanding that there's an ecosystem within there, that can benefit, then that's where we really start to see the benefits of IoT. So for example, with Renfrewshire, we did a case study with them and a return investment study, and we were able to show about 192 pounds per property per year saving on maintenance alone. But we haven't done that study with the other parts of the organisation. And whilst 192 pounds of property is good, it could obviously be a lot better, and it would get a lot more traction if we were able to work with all the teams as one. I hope you like the graphics there. Did that myself, and that's where we really see the value being driven out of it. Multiple use cases, again, as I just said, you've got different parts of an organisation: maintenance, tenant management. When we started with Renfrewshire Council, it was actually with regards an energy efficiency play, and that very quickly turned into being talked about a maintenance play. With Leeds City Council, it was all about the health of the tenant and how do we help the tenant live more healthily in their home and look after their home. And again, that then became very much about tenant engagement, and further down the road about the maintenance of properties. Mary Hill Housing Association actually turned out nothing to do with IoT as such, but it was more about connectivity and getting connectivity for tenants as part of the Scottish Government drive. But then the organisation themselves realised, well, if we've got connectivity in the property, why don't we start using it to our own ends as well? So, it starts off in one part of the organisation and eventually ends up in other parts of the organisation. But we need to make it a bit more holistic. To my mind, one of the most important things to increase the uptake is to make it easy. One, reduce the cost. That makes it an easier decision. Two, speed of deployment is really critical whenever you have tens of thousands of assets. Having anything, a deployment that takes more than half an hour in a property is going to slow the whole thing down and maybe not get across the whole of a property portfolio. Having a product offering that isn't dedicated to the sector and is just generic doesn't deliver the value. If somebody has to go looking for the value just because it's a generic system, it's sort of doing a disservice to IoT as a whole. And again, same thing with data platforms. If all you're doing is delivering data on a smart, nice-looking dashboard, then that doesn't really deliver the value. And that's where we need to keep on driving, is keep driving the value forward. And you do that by working really closely with the customers and proving the value, not just saying there's value there, but really proving the value to them. And there's some really good products out there that people are really showing the value from it. And I think finally for me on how do we make IoT really deliver is collaboration, working together. I don't necessarily mean actually working on projects together with that, but working together as an ecosystem and make it credible. Don't just put out wild claims, if you like. I was on a sort of coffee morning type call, a bit like this, last week, and we were talking about a project that we've been working on, and a sort of generic IoT service provider sort of said, "Oh, well, we could do it for half that price at twice the speed, take half the time to roll it out." And I was sort of, well, why didn't you go for the project then? And it turns out actually the service they were providing wasn't to the same spec, didn't deliver any of the data analysis. It really just showed the data. So again, by making claims without being really specific about what you can achieve, does a disservice to IoT as a whole. There's plenty of work out there to go around, and much further afield from organizations in Canada and Australia, New Zealand that we've had connections from. So whilst 2020 might not be the year, I don't think yet we are really getting there. I mean, there is so much possibility for IoT in housing that I think we have to get there in the end. But only if we get to start scaling up the pilot projects and then moving from pilot projects into actually rolling out systems. Pilot projects are great and people will need to keep on doing them for a while yet, but eventually, hopefully, we'll get to the stage where an IoT service or system is just being bought off the shelf, like, you know, Oracle or Salesforce or something like that is. We need to collaborate, we need to educate, we need to make it really, really easy to deploy systems, and we need to drive the cost down. And as I said, there's so much potential, but we really, really need to prove it and deliver it and not just say it over and over again. So my sort of call to action, if you like, for this, for today, would be that if we can get more C-suite teams engaged with what's going on, then that will really drive things forward. We've had the experience where we've won contracts and, you know, they've been announced where we, the next day, all of a sudden get the CEO of the organization going, oh, that sounds brilliant. How come I've never heard of this before? And that's what we really need to change. We need to get the whole of an organization understanding what's going on. And that's me.
Thanks very much, Dane. That's great. Let's invite Rowley on to the stage, please.
I can get my microphone to work.
There you go, you're all sorted. Thanks a lot then, Dane. If you turn your cam and mic off, I will hand over to Rowley.
Fabulous. Let me get this for you all. Hopefully you can see that. Good. Right, brilliant. Good morning. SmartRent is a smart home automation company which brings the benefits of smart technology to the previously overlooked rental market. After all, the relationship between housing provider and resident has changed, as the Hackett report and the Green Paper highlight. Breaking the stigma of social housing is long overdue. And this move has been accelerated by both the higher expectations of residents who are using an expanding array of apps and digital services to remove friction from their own lives on their own terms. And obviously this has been accelerated more recently due to the COVID pandemic. SmartRent has unique experience because of our roots in large-scale rental housing management starting back in the noughties, before spinning out as a tech startup 3 years ago to solve the challenges we face as landlords. SmartRent created proprietary enterprise software which integrates with industry-specific hardware to create and deliver an exceptional smart home experience for renters. It's specifically designed to create an efficient management and monitoring platform for landlords while empowering residents with industry-leading technology. Our product has been tested at scale in the US for some time now, and as part of our growth, we're excited to be expanding into the UK. I'll be sharing the lessons learned on our journey in the US and see how we can apply them to solve problems in the UK context. And like Dane said earlier, part of my role in the UK for SmartRent is to educate and share knowledge across the marketplace. So coming into the UK, we started talking with Hackett, and we were pleased to collaborate with them as a real-world example of a next-generation smart home solution for the future of the smart home white paper that was released in May. I think what stood out from the white paper for me was the imperative to embrace and build tech capability across service delivery, whether it's to solve an immediate problem like COVID-19 or as an ongoing commitment to improving customer services whilst reducing operational costs. And then we've got that additional regulatory compliance aspect. So especially now with the more intense scrutiny and expectation that's coming from all corners, or so it would seem. After all, an IoT-enabled automated smart home doesn't only serve the landlord, it promotes independence for residents, brings social housing into the digital age, and reduces the stigma, leveling the playing field. So it's an opportunity to truly move forward on all levels. For me, it's one of those no-brainer moments when there's an opportunity to combine technology and innovation and create an operationally practical solution. So how can UK housing providers take the learnings and experience of digital transformation in the US and use them to the best advantage here in the UK? So mirroring the first two key messages from the hacked report, SmartRent CEO Lucas Haldeman used IoT to transform the business strategy and reduce the operating costs back in 2008 for a startup real estate investment trust where he was CTO. They built up this REIT from 0 to 44,000 homes across 12 states in the US in quite short order by buying up empty foreclosed homes across the country in the wake of the financial crisis. But that became a problem in itself. Suddenly they had thousands of homes to manage, whether they had air conditioners left on, suffered excessive damage from undetected water leaks, or simply needed somebody to provide access. A huge admin burden that had arrived, both in terms of maintenance and indeed of just viewing access for potential renters. Now, we all know you can solve a lot of problems with human power alone, but it's not efficient or cost effective, but it is easy. But the issue becomes even more magnified when none of your assets touch each other. So the team, Lucas's team, started looking for a smarter solution to their problems. Now, in 2008, IoT solutions were still in their infancy in the home. Blackberries were all the rage, the iPhone had been released, but there were already some good and established mobile technology, as Dane mentioned earlier, that was available, and it was able to connect nascent smart locks, thermostats, and sensors. The trouble was, no one had ever thought about smart homes as an enterprise-level solution for a landlord 12 years ago. And that's the problem Lucas and the team set out to solve. And then update that platform and the approach more recently in an advanced iteration at SmartRent to bring those cost savings, efficiencies, and decreased risk to rental housing operators and their residents. So since SmartRent itself was spun out and founded in 2017, growth has been extraordinary. So applying enterprise software alongside a centralized management approach, which is SmartRent's approach, has helped solve many problems at once in one place, advancing progress. That all sounds great, Rowley, I hear you say, but this is all words. Show me some examples. Tell me some stories about how this has worked for landlords. So let's talk about what in this case, a high density smart home building looks like. Our customers and the wider multifamily sector in the UK start out with the same base smart home package for each unit, be it a single family home or a block, to help control costs, improve efficiencies, limit damage, and improve their customers' experience of their home. So we're talking smart locks for access control, thermostats for temperature control, and leak sensors for asset protection and damage mitigation. So let's look at how a smart home can take care of access. Keyless access simplifies everyday living for the resident. No lost keys or lockouts. It also increases flexibility in providing access to visitors and service providers. No more keys under the doormat or having to coordinate with the property services team. A resident can provide a temporary access code to family members visiting from out of town, or they might need to provide a recurring but limited access code to the childminder, who only may need entry for a 2-hour window on Tuesdays and Thursdays when mum's at work and somebody's looking after the kids after school. With each scenario, whenever the door is opened, the resident gets a notification on their phone. Think about the use case of vacant unit repairs. Smart locks on the doors for the home's entrances offer immediate secure access to both the residents and the maintenance contractors. This reduces the need for multiple trips back to the office to coordinate keys and move them around, fewer miles driven. So that also supports the sustainability goals too. Imagine the time saved just on void turnarounds with multiple trades accessing a property, each with their own unique code, which is logged on the system every time the door's opened. So smart home technology can eliminate some of those recurring financial and labor costs entirely. Simply confirm the move out in the housing system and the unit set to vacant mode, and then everyone across the team can access to that property now that it's in vacant mode. Secondly, we have a raft of technology to monitor and control the environment within homes. Climate controls are automated via a smart thermostat. A series of sensors collect data on the environmental conditions, including humidity, temperature, noise. Data analytics from those devices can then help landlords move towards proactive maintenance regimes, preempting mold, damp, and condensation issues before they become problems in repairing that the home, and also prevent asset and litigation claims. So obviously something at the forefront of landlords' minds with the Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Act. Studies across the UK and the US have shown smart thermostats are clear winners for residents and landlords. In the US, we're seeing savings of anything up to 40% when a landlord limits the heating and cooling in vacant units. So it's no surprise that this technology has been an early success story for the home automation industry, just with people in their own homes. Thirdly, we come to asset protection through damage avoidance and mitigation from water damage. In US multifamily buildings, water damage accounts for over 70% of the insurance claims. Our COO was talking the other day. We were installing smart rent in a 14-story block in West Hollywood about a year ago, and a vacant unit started leaking on one of the top floors. And our guys were several floors below, working from the ground up. And just as soon as we're thinking we'd finished for the day and everything was good, a leak sensor triggers, and the app sends our team and the building supervisor a warning notification. The building super was able to identify and get into the triggered unit pretty quickly using his phone to unlock the door and see right away where the issue was. It was water dripping from above. Now, there's a downside to our story. Our team of installers hadn't started in the upper floors of that building yet. The super realized straight away that he needed to go up a floor and he needed a key from his office. So he dashed down to get some keys, went up a floor and got the wrong key. Had to go back to the office, get the right key. And while he was going up and down looking for keys, thinking he was going to be able to get into a unit and solve the problem quickly, the water was still running. So it took 5 minutes to diagnose and access the property where the trigger was, and then nearly an hour before getting into the unit or having shut off the water. And the cost of that one property in damage alone was about $750,000. That one leak event would have paid for the owner's entire property portfolio to be fitted out with smart equipment. Something to think about. And finally, let's not forget the benefits in terms of a resident and their resident empowerment. Your tenants now live in a smart home. They can control the devices from on the device or via their phone, further narrowing the divide between home owners and renters in the social sector. Their smart home also saves them money, with thermostat automation alone having the potential to offer a 20% reduction in their energy bills. So how do we use this and innovate using this tech in COVID? Leasing and housing teams can benefit from smart home automation themselves. The self-showing phenomenon allows qualified residents to access and the privacy and time to think about a new home by themselves. Using smart locks to make viewings easier and also reducing the need for accompanying staff, we can enable a self-guided tour to take place. And we can go even one step further by authenticating a person using online validation checks at the start of a leasing process. Let them book a time to view a property online at a time that suits them, maybe 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. So we've already seen COVID demonstrating significant upsurges in demand for self-showings. For example, at the end of March, when lockdown loomed, the second largest home builder across the US asked us how quickly we could get the system into their model homes and support their sales and viewing process. Within a week, we had rolled it out across 77 units. By the 2nd of April, we had covered another 500 unoccupied properties. And by the 17th, we were installed in over 2,000 homes and across their portfolio in 35 markets in the US. And the evidence from the market is that similar providers of self-showing tours have experienced much the same increase in volume as the leasing cycle moves from in-person and on paper to a full digital experience. So let's look at how we've worked with some customers to provide these solutions. ROI and case studies are really useful. And we can see from some of these report extracts how our commercial residential real estate investment trust customers have improved margins by deploying Smart Rent across the portfolio. Now, typically, REITs hold all their results quite close to their chest, but you can get some clear insights from their reports. So Aimco, for example, had deployed across more than 30,000 units at the back end of last year, and their experience shows happier residents who stay longer, fewer keys cut, and a holistic transformation of services and customer experience as a whole. In terms of ROI in the UK, we expect payback within 36 months on a 100 units in terms of cost savings and damage mitigation alone. But this technology is just not here to make efficiency savings. It is about the potential for fundamental transformation in social housing. After all, COVID has shown us how effectively things can be done when we're able to harness technology and focus on our priorities. Let's not lose that momentum. Let's look at innovation and which can provide a step change in the industry. Why do I think Smart Rent stands apart from current smart home automation systems in the UK? I think its success in the US has been down to the simplicity of its bespoke software, which integrates different technologies to create one single management platform. Each solution can be customized and provides all you need to save costs and improve customer experience and protect your assets. So let's take what we've learned from COVID and be bold. Let's not lose the momentum, but move forward with transformational technology, which offers the ability to change how we deliver services and how social housing tenants live. It's easy to operate, it's empowering, it delivers a better service at a reduced cost, and it's environmentally beneficial. It is the smart thing to do. As I finish, and I know Stewart's going to be worried about time here, thank you for your attention. We all had to adapt to our new operating environment and move into this virtual world for conferences, and we were hoping to do the same at Smart Rent. Now, we know it's a poor substitute, but we do have some very useful A5 notebooks we'd happy send you in our place. If you'd welcome addition to your stationery collection, I invite you to take out your mobile phone, turn on your camera and point it at the QR code on the screen. It'll pop up a browser, and Rosie from our marketing team will pop one in the mail to you when she returns from her staycation next week. Thanks again, and look forward to catching up with you in the break.
Thanks, Rowley. And of course, remember everybody, we recorded these sessions. So if you're scrambling around for your smartphone to take the QR code, you'll be able to do it when we stick the video on YouTube. So thanks so much, Rowley. That was excellent.
Thanks, Stuart.
Can I invite Cian to the stage, please? Hopefully he's not been called off on another call.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Cian. I'm now going to hand over to you, mate. So your 15 minutes begins now.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks a million. So my name is Cian O'Flaherty. I'm the CEO of Safe Facility. And when Stewart asked me to present here, I was thinking what we wanted to share is actually what we've learned. We've done a number of smart building and smart compliance installations now, and there's a number of lessons, but I think the bigger picture for us has been that the technology exists now for buildings to report on themselves. And so this chat is really about how compliance and safety in the IoT era is really the story of the decade that's coming. I was taken with Dane's mention of this being the year of IoT. I think that we're likely to be promised for the next decade that the next decade is going to be the decade of smart buildings or IoT. I think it's really going to be that. It's going to be promises. It's going to be promises that everything is going to be simpler, cheaper, newer chips, newer devices, lots of connectivity, and loads of startups with a load of great promises and ideas. There's going to be a promise that all you need is cloud, that software is just going to make everything better, And if you just migrate all of your data to our cloud platform, you would have a better life. And then there's the productivity of cutting your energy, making things better for tenants, improving your maintenance. So there's a significant amount of promising when you think of the impact those changes could have to the budgets and the operating costs of the housing authority sector. But what I'm noticing is absent in a lot of these discussions that we hear of and that we share elsewhere is that the HAs should have a number of really important questions they're asking in order to put some shape on the promise that's out there. I think that's probably the missing component for us. Those questions are: what are the strategic objectives really served by the smart building? Why should we put it in, and what does it do for us? How can we harness it cost effectively, which I think everyone has highlighted. Dane's, again, with the ROI was really on the nose. And do we have the internal capacity, and more importantly, do we need the internal capacity to execute these projects? So I guess the way we look at it now is the question is, if you walk into a room and you say, in the next decade, our buildings can report on themselves, what would you have them tell you? And we've come to believe that safety and compliance is actually the smart buildings killer app. It's the one that accommodates many of the ROI requirements while having a double bottom line impact of improving your regulatory compliance and safety, improving the quality of your environment and building safer communities, which is of course part of the mission of the HA sector. So we've seen huge numbers of push factors pushing people towards IoT and projects. Grenfell is perhaps the most powerful and visible in our recent past. Considerable public pressure to make the stock and the lives of tenants safer. As a follow-on from that, we've seen Hackett and the golden thread. We think that the golden thread is likely to be a huge push factor over the coming decade at forcing some logic on IoT, smart buildings, and a joined up approach to streaming your data and your regulation workload. Separately, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but budgets are always tight, but they have become tighter. A decade of austerities left bodies facing really difficult budget allocations. But compliance and safety remain non-negotiable. So the top two push factors are likely to increase the workload, but your budget's going to stay where it is and perhaps reduce. So something's going to have to square that circle, and we think that over time, with the right projects, IoT and smart buildings are likely to be it. The people themselves are also pushing HAs in the direction of smart housing. I mean, 90% of the buildings we're going to live in 2050 are already built. The population is rapidly aging, and it's a dynamic impact on how we profile and how we attend to the work that has to be done in these clients' and tenants' accommodations. This number of skilled technicians now required is going to be larger, but the pool from which they're drawn is going to shrink as the working age population shrinks. Competition for manpower and the difficulty of attending to a more dependent pool of tenants is going to be incredibly difficult. And 2020 brought us our fifth single slide push factor, COVID-19. In early discussions since March, a couple of things have come to us from government here and government over in the UK. Lockdowns are coming again. If you thought the first one was bad, try managing it on a geographic and location-based basis where they can go to one postcode and not another. The problem with a returning of lockdown is that your obligations are not going to be eliminated. You're still going to have to conduct testing. It's only going to be sustainable for so long. And as fear rises with lockdown, access is going to become even harder. I see there was an interesting chat already about access. I think COVID is only going to increase the difficulties of access as people become more fearful that regular inspection visits from someone who's already visited 4 other blocks this morning is an infection control risk. And they're probably right. If you're sending teams of technicians building to building across the day, they could successfully attend 6 to 9 buildings. If you start adding in proper PPE and protection and hand washing, their days could balloon to 18 hours to get that same body of work done. It doesn't scale in the current COVID-19 environment. So they're the 5 major push factors. The 4 pull factors we're seeing is, as has been highlighted, hardware innovation. There's a huge number of sensors out there now. They will do things from automating your fire safety, automating your humidity and temperature detection, automating your fall detection, everything, you name it, and they are slowly but surely becoming more affordable, which I think is a critical feature for rolling out projects in this space. We've seen business model innovation like our own compliance as a service, sensor as a service, that are making it affordable for you to take it in-house now and make an operational saving in year one and spread out the costs of capital, which I think is probably the second major leg on the stool in driving at scale transformation of the housing sector. Interestingly, the digital transformation discussions focus a lot on customer service, customer facing tools, even some of the sort of rationalizations of back office. But IoT has a key role in delivering digital transformation to the teams that are in asset maintenance and compliance. And I think, you know, some of us would probably recognize those teams are among the least digitally transformed in the entire sector. Not in everybody's case, but, you know, at scale, when you take the bird's eye view, many of them are still operating highly manual processes with highly manual data entry. Digital transformation is a solid reason to take on board the IoT in housing authorities, and it's the best fit for strategically justifying it. And lastly, a major pull factor is platform thinking. Many of you would have your own housing platforms for management, and as those platforms turn themselves towards API-based infrastructure, platform thinking is going to basically want to pull and push data from the various IoT vendors and their various data pools and their backend and even their platforms. And so just make it really simple to plug and play. I think those pull factors for clients who are already investing in elsewhere in their IT are going to drive over the next 10 years that closing the loop on the IoT rollout. I would share Dane's skepticism that this is the year of IoT. I would probably be skeptical that it's even the decade of IoT, but if there's ever going to be a decade, it's this one. So from our own experience, why are these so attractive? Why is it that compliance is the killer app? On the left here is simple flowcharts that we did up when we were starting our engagement with customers. The top are the 7 typical manual steps of compliance. You'll see step 1 there is visual inspecting. That's a huge cost. There are teams across the country that visit endless numbers of sites over the course of a quarter to conduct tests. And by the end of the quarter, their job is to go back to building 1 and start again. Their second step is to complete written or digital reports and enter the data. And it's not uncommon for that data, if it were printed, to reach thousands of pages every quarter. So there's huge potential failure points across those 7 steps. If the building reported on itself, which is how we've started to frame it, you're looking at an automated sensor that comes in and does the testing itself. That's the critical step 1, that you don't need to send someone out to do anything. And critical step 2 is that data is then sent to a compliance application that can manage it. So it can give you your reporting as you legally need it. And then really, the first time you visit your system is that final step in blue to repair it. You really shouldn't be attending your compliance testing until it's failed. And as a result, you're looking at 95% fewer visits over 5 years and at least a 10 times improvement in your compliance data quality. You're in a position to manage at scale thousands, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of compliance endpoints across a year without a single inspection being required. And then once every 5 years going out and conducting your repairs or updates. That's the vision, and that's what a building should be doing when it's reporting on itself. And so I think when we see clients come to us in their head, this is exactly what they have. I have my buildings on the left, a load of wireless bits, and then on the right, I just want to see it on a screen. And the problems that they've encountered is that making that happen is has turned into a very complex bun fight, because we haven't helped them talk to each other. We haven't helped the buildings talk to their owners. So for the best quality projects, we've seen that really the best quality customers have done the digging, and they know where to start. And the best place to start from a project point of view is the end. If you know that your building is going to report in itself, first thing you have to know is what you want to ask, and then how you're going to get the most bang for your buck with the answers that you're getting. So this simple flowchart is what we've done up for our emergency lighting system. Our emergency lighting sensor automates the testing of an emergency light and then streams it back over the course of thousands of buildings, it can save quite a lot of money. You can see the flow here that it was manual inspection. All results are logged to a PDA. Data is ingested to a spreadsheet and then exported to your housing management platform. Your compliance log is is noted, and then the remedial job is issued. So you break it down with your process because you want to get to automation. You're doing your individual step and journey mapping, and then you come back, and with the process mapped, you know that your solution needs to eliminate numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that a successful project is going to capture all 4 of those steps. Some of the problems we have on the market is that you can buy a step 2 solution, a step 3 solution, and a step 4 solution from 3 different vendors, but then getting them to talk together is as much cost as what you were doing originally anyway. So by knowing how much of the process you need to bracket off, how much of the process you really need to automate to realize value, you're starting to give yourself a threshold and you're setting vendors an expectation point. And this is where we usually see mistakes, because the kid in a sweet shop is probably the most common character we see when we're in meetings. These people or these customers have had a little nibble from each solution on the market. There's been very little of a strategic goal, and as a result, they end up with indecision. Having too many vendor options, having too many sensor options, and not having a defined process that you want to put your automated bracket around ends up with constantly trying and perhaps a bit of a toothache. Not knowing your process, secondly, means that, again, you have the potential to pick the wrong tool for the job. IoT is a toolkit. IoT is a series of solutions, but you need to know the correct order. You need to have the right screw and screw set to get the job done. The square peg round hole is another factor from not having your process mapped and knowing what you need to bracket off. It's tempting to get a sensor to do a job, but the job is not what it was built for. And as a result, you end up with a really unsatisfactory outcome and the generalized belief that IoT isn't very useful at all and it's all a load of hype. And I think the square peg round hole is something that a lot of us in the IoT sector would see when we meet clients initially, will have turned them off and creates a lot of work around getting a quality project off the ground. And I think the fourth is potentially a lack of standards within the organization. It can be tempting to trust experts like ourselves, but we all have different reasons for picking the solutions that we offer you. A housing authority is best set when it picks its own standards as well. I know that we're going to see from Mid Wales later around Laura. I think that's a really helpful example of how by setting your own internal standards, you're also working to streamline your vendors in a way that's going to give you the best outcomes and fewest potential mistakes like 1, 2, and 3. So the most successful projects are the ones that get your building to report on itself. To do that, you map your process, you figure out what you need to automate, and you get the building to tell you that entire story in one go. You don't need all of the sensors. Probably unfortunate for some of us here today, but you don't need all of them. You probably need about 5% of them. And when you map your process and overlay your workflow from your IoT devices, you can figure out if you're going to get the job done before you put your hand in your pocket. Doing it right and not doing it cheap is probably the second major way of getting your building to report on itself. If you're implementing, like I described, a solution that talks about 1 or 2 portions of the process, you're doing half the job because it's cheaper. And as a result, you're still keeping the costs of your manual inspection, for example. So half of the job only does 10% of the cost reduction. It costs you a huge amount of money, and then you're going to have to reinvest what you got at the outset. So again, bulletproof your project by getting your process mapped and map your IoT workflow to it. Be creative and be brave is the most successful projects we've seen. You've an enormous compliance workload across the sector. A smart building can automatically test itself and it can inform you of non-compliance. That is a cheaper way of doing it, but it's also a safer and a better way of doing it. First, you create your desired automation, dream it and go big, and you demand it from your vendors, and eventually the vendors will turn up with the product because that's where the money is. That's it. Thank you very much for that. They're the main takeaways. If anyone is interested, I know the slides will be up later. You can send me an email, and yeah, I'm around all day, so happy to chat about some of the other experiences we've had. Thanks a million.
Thanks so much, Cian, and thank you very much to Dane and to Rowley. I think the interesting thing for me, though, is 3 very different presentations on the same kind of thing. So thank you, Rowley. If Dane's around and you want to jump on, take a bow. Yay! Look, classic. There we go. Classic. You staged that, Rowley.
You've famous.
Staged that, mate. But thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much to Dane, Rowley, and Cian for kicking off the UnCon. So thanks so much, guys. There's been an awful lot of chat that's been going on during the session, so that's good to see. We're going to take a break now, guys. Take a break for half an hour. As I said, grab a coffee, grab a tea, grab wine or beer if that's your tipple of choice. Remember, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. But please take time to get on the tables and talk to your fellow delegates. See you in half an hour. Thanks so much.